Aloha, welcome to Healthy Ukulele. So we are on week 2, okay? Week 2 of the way I look at the fret. And last week we had gone over the cops always get free donuts thing, right? The connection between the chords. We did major and minor. This week we're continuing that, but we're going to look at the dominant chords. Now, here's the thing. The dominant chord, unlike major and minor, when we did the major and minor, we were focusing on the triads, which is how we get the cops always get free donuts thing. And so with a dominant chord is not a triad, but it is derived from a diminished triad. And so I'm going to be showing you guys that connection today. In order to do that, we have some explaining that we kind of have to do, right? Just a little bit. So that we can understand how this works. Now, from last week, we had this, right? You guys remember this? So we've got our musical alphabet, and we can see how we built our scale. We used a whole step, half step, then whole step, and half step. And so the example here that we did was the key of A, right? When we do that, we find that we have C sharp, F sharp, and G sharp. And that means it's 3 sharps, and that in reading a key signature, you see 3 sharps at the front of it, you know you're in the key of A. Now, if you don't understand any of that, that's okay. Okay, we're gonna work through that today. Now, in order to do this, we're gonna try to start at the easiest level. Okay, so we have this, and we're going to go ahead and erase this key of A. And we're going to do the key of C because that's a little less confusing. No sharps or flats. So let me blow this up a little bit. And we'll do this. Or you know what? Let's do this one first. Okay, you guys remember that, right? Whole, half, whole, half. So if you got that, then... Oops. And this part will be a cakewalk. Oh, did it again. There we go. Okay, so let's start from C. Whole, half, whole, half. So we go C to D, gives me a whole step. D to E, another whole step. E to F is my half step. F to G, whole step. G going to A, whole step. A to B, whole step. And then finally B to C. It's my half step, right? Whole, half, whole, half. Gives me the letters C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then it just repeats, right? So if I got this and I just tied these together and just repeat, we can see how this works. Now, in order to find our chords, we just skip over notes, right? So let's change our color here. And we'll go with, let's see, let's go blue. That'll work. Okay, so to make our chords, we'd grab this guy, right? That guy, and that guy. Right, and that gives me a C chord. So, let's see, let me let one more person in. Here we go. So we've got our C chord, right? So if I go here and I skip C, E, G, right? I do the same thing with D. I skip over to F, skip from F over to A. So I got D, F, A. Right, and then E, G, B gives me F, A, C, G, B, D, A, C, E, B, D, F. Right? And that's giving me my chords within my key. Okay, so now knowing that, if we were to look at each of these chords individually, we're going to find that the one chord, if we do this major scale thing, no matter what key we're in, the one chord always comes out as a major chord. So does the 4 chord, so does the 5 chord. Okay? Oh, that looks like an M, or an N. Right, there we go. And so these come out as minors, right? 2, 3, and 6. And then 7 comes out as diminished. Okay, and what we found is when we made our chord pictures, the difference between the major and the minor chord is that the major chord has the 3rd note within the scale as major, and that the minor chord has the 3rd note as minor, right? So if we're just looking at this, we can start to see how we build our chords. And so it's easy to say that in any key we play, the 1, the 4, the 5 are major chords. 2, 3, 6 is minor, and 7 is diminished. And we can do this with any key, right? Like we just did with A last week, where we looked at all those chords in A. Now, let's take a look at how this works on the ukulele, right? So as we can see last week, we had these, right? Our major chords and our minor chords. And if you look at the major and the minor chord, you'll find that with the major chord, right? If I just move that note back that way, I get my minor chord, right? So the 3rd drops down. That's how you get the minor, is a flat 3. Now, having done that, let's see. Oh, that's wrong. Having done that, right? We can go ahead and do this. We'll do our major picture, and I'm going to show you guys how we turn this into both diminished and dominant 7. Okay, so in order to do this, though, we're going to have to move our chords into the middle of the picture. So like this. And then we'll do a second row too. And the reason for that is because we're going to be lowering things. We have to kind of adjust for the tuning of the ukulele and for the nut. So for example, if I'm playing a chord like this, right, C, if I had to lower something here, the only way to do it would be to tune it down, right? And so since I can't do that, what I would do is I would go to my next shape, right? Cops always, I'd go to the A shape, and then if I had to move 3 and 5 down, I've got my diminished shape, right? So those two move down, and I've got that left, right? So let's see how that would look here. So to make a diminished chord, we said we're going to move the 3 and the 5 back, right? So in this case, this and this is my 1. That's my root, right? So let's go ahead and change the color so that we can see that those are different, right? And then we'll do same thing here. And so the root stays the same, right? Everything else moves down. Another way to think of this would be to do a diminished chord. You just raise up the root, but because the root is the thing that we're going by, and that's what's going to give the chord its name, we don't want to think of it as raising the root, but lowering everything else, if that makes sense. Okay. And then we have what am I doing? Red, right? Okay, color red. Okay, so there's my roots here. Now, the other notes in here are going to go down a half step, meaning I'd have my 3 and my 5 going down a half step. And this would be, while it is not a C chord anymore, in this case, it would be E flat, right? This would be an E flat diminished chord with a C diminished shape, because it's derived from the C major picture. Okay, same thing here. This is an A picture, but we're at a C chord, so this would be a C diminished chord with the A shape, if I do like that. And sorry, I'm a little bit anal retentive. I like to get things as well lined up as I can, and with my iPad on the stand here, it's hard to get things to line up correctly, but there you go. We got these guys going down. Okay, and then everything here goes down. Now keep in mind, with this chord, we did have an optional note, right? Remember that? Whenever we played the F shape, right? This thing, you guys remember this? Wherever we got the F, we've got this note as optional. Right? And then let's change the color of that so we can show that it's optional. We'll make that green. Oh, it still looks like blue. Okay, so good enough. Fine. But we got this, and that whole thing would move. In fact, you know what? Look, just to make it stand out, because on here we're going to go ahead and highlight that guy. Okay, now, last but not least, the D shape diminished. All right, we grab this and move it down here. So the letter names above there are still pertinent, right? But these are our shapes. So this would be a C diminished shape, A diminished shape, G diminished shape, F diminished shape, and D diminished shape. But it's whatever this note is that's going to give the chord its name. So in this case, this would be, as we said, E flat diminished, C diminished. This would be, what is that? B flat diminished. In this case here, E flat again, or I'm sorry, A flat, and then got guitar head going on right now, and then this would be F diminished shape, or F diminished chord, but with a D diminished shape, right? So if we can understand that now, with the dominant chords, it's a little bit different, because dominant chords have 4 notes, okay? 4 note chords. So what we would do is we would drop one of the roots. So let's go here, grab our roots. Okay, those 2, I could drop either one of those down a whole step, and it would give me a dominant chord. Now, it's not feasible. I mean, you could, and it would be fine to do this, right? But you see the issue. Look at how big of a spread that is. That's not really conducive to having, you know, good technique if you're going to do that. All right, so what we want to do is we'll grab this guy and move him down a whole step. Okay, so now this is still the root, but now we've got our 7th chord. Right, so this one, let's change color, or you know what, let's highlight it. We'll just make it different. We'll do a red highlight to show that it came from, or purple, fine, good enough, to show that it came from the the root, right? Now we got this one, right? I could move this down, right? But that, again, look what happens. Super long shape. So if I just move this, much easier, right? Gives me my A shape. Okay. The G shape. Moving that one would make the shape too long, right? So I move this one, much easier. Now here's where we encounter our dilemma. Okay, so with the F shape and the D shape, we remember that there's only one root, right? So whereas here I still had that root, right? I still have this root. The only root I have here is this guy, right? So you remember what we did? We had that optional note, right? So if I throw that here, okay, that gives me my optional note there. And this note is the 5, right? But since I've already put this in, I've already got my 5. So I don't need another 5. I can move this to 7. So 5, whole step to 6, and a half step to flat 7, right? Which makes it dominant. Now, here's where it gets funny, right? We'll do this. And here, let's move that guy. Because that's part of the chord. That's the 5th. Now, that note becomes the option. Right? I could play it this way, and I could play it without any 5th. I can double up my thirds. Right? And I could do that too. And that would be fine. Now, with this one, this is my only root. Okay? And if I brought this up, like how I did with the F shape, that would be a C shape. Right? So we don't want to do that, because that throws things out of whack. But what we can do is we can go ahead and just take the root down and just make a rootless chord. And here's where you see the connection between dominant and diminished. Check this out. See that shape? Same shape. Right? And so our diminished chord, or a dominant chord, is just a diminished with the added root of the chord we're trying to play, as opposed to playing the root on the diminished chord as itself. Right? So what I mean by that is, if we look at our ukulele key of C, right? Everybody knows what chord this is, right? This is a G7 chord. But it's derived from the shape of B diminished. So all a B diminished is if I were to walk up and do triad C, the next 3 notes be DFA, gives me D minor, right? EGB gives me E minor, FAC gives me F, right? Then I got G, A minor, B diminished, BDF, right? And then C. So all this is a B diminished chord, but we're adding in G, gives me a G7. Now, if you guys have played any of these songs that we put up on here, you're going to find out that whenever you play in the key of C, what happens, right? What's our turnaround chord? G7, right? Everybody goes to G7 before we come back to C most times. Now there's exceptions. We can use the 4 minor, we can use other things, but for the most part, to go back to C, the thing that makes us go back to C is G7, right? You're not going to use B diminished, even though that's the function of the chord, right? So if we look at our picture here, where we had this, watch this. My 5 chord and my 7 chord are tied together. Okay, look at the notes in this. Okay, now if I wanted to make a G7, remember what we said, we dropped the root, right? What's a whole step down from G? Let's use a different color here. We have F, right? That's a whole step down from G. Now, we said to make a G7, we also go to our B diminished chord and we add a G. Look at this. Are these the same letters? Right. So that's how that works. So by the same token, if I were to do a D7 chord, right? Here's my D. Drop it a whole step. This could be played as a D7, but it is actually an F sharp diminished triad, right? And I could add in my optional 5. Same thing. Right? Still F sharp diminished triad. The only thing that makes it a D7 chord would be to keep the root and add the dominant, right? The flat 7. So, even though I play this chord and I call it D7, it's actually an F sharp diminished triad. However, functionally, it is a D7. The same way we look at G7, right? If I put this here, right? People will say, well, that's not G7. Well, we use it as G7, right? When I do Hawaiian music. It's a B diminished. There's no G in that, right? Look at my C9. Right? So that's how that works. Now, the reason this is important is because if we learn every picture the same way we did with the cops always get free donuts thing, right? But we have to mark our place. We have to know where everything is. So if I go like this, here's my C chord. Right? We said, and we learned this last week, this was the C minor. And to make the C7, we just take our root down a whole step. Right? C, C7, C minor. Okay, let's go to the A chord. A, A7, A minor. G, G7, G minor. F, F7, F minor. And then D, D7, D minor. Alright, so if I do this and I exercise it this way and I play Cops Always Get Free Donuts, C shape, ties to the A shape, G shape, F shape, optional 5, the root ties to the D, ties back to the C, right? So, cops always get free donuts, back to cops. That's all my C chords around the neck. It works in minor as well. C minor shape ties into the A minor shape, ties into the G minor shape, ties into the F minor shape, ties into the D minor shape, back into the C minor shape. Now the dominant 7. We know that this is the root, but that's how we're playing the chord. But since we remember that the root was here, we build our A shape. We remember that this is the root, A7, right? And we remember this is the root, so I go to the G chord, or G shape, right? Now I've got G7. I remember this is the root. I build my F7 shape. There's my root for D. I drop that down a whole step. I have that F sharp diminished triad looking thing, but this is actually just a B diminished, right? Also known as the D7 shape. Back to C7 shape. So cops always get free donuts. Dominant. So here's how we practice. We go major, then minor, dominant. Cops always get free donuts, major. Cops always get free donuts, minor. Cops always get free donuts, 7. Okay? Now, if you really wanted to do the diminished thing, then you have to remember to do the diminished not from the 5, but from the 7 of it. Right? So in the key of C, the diminished would be B. In the key of G, the diminished would be the F sharp. And it would be the note previous to it. Now, when you build your scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1 is major, 2 is minor, 3 is minor, 4 is major, 5 is major, 6 is minor, 7 is diminished. Here's where things change, right? When we start adding to the chord. Like, have you guys ever been playing on a chord chart and you see F major 7, C major 7, D minor 7, B minor 7 flat 5, stuff like that, right? These things are derived from adding in the next note, right? So if I go here, you notice how let's erase some of this. Now I'm going to erase that G, but I'm going to leave that F there. Okay? And the reason is, if we go to the next note, right? So C, G, and I go like this. I go 1, skip, and I skip again. Oh, that gives me B. Right? So that's the note previous to that. Right? Kind of makes sense? Previous to this was C, D, E, G, A. Now this becomes C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7. Now the G is no longer a major 7. The G becomes a dominant 7, right? And when we look at dominant 7, we're looking at just 7. So we're just going to write the note, or write the letter. This is 7, and this becomes B half diminished, also known as B minor 7 flat 5. Okay, and that's the next set of notes. Now, we're going to find when we do the cops always get free donuts thing, with those chords and those shapes, it doesn't line up the same, because now we're looking at something where we have 4 strings and 4 notes, right? So every shape now usually only has 4 pictures. But because we use something special in ukulele called a drop 2 voicing, meaning we take the note that is the second highest note and we put it in the bass, right? That becomes a drop 2 voicing. That makes it bass. It's funny saying bass on the ukulele, even though well, with reentrant tuning that's even less credible for that, right? So we're just using the shape and moving that note down. Anyway, here's how we look at it. We've got C, A, G, F, and D. Major, minor, and dominant, right? And now here's where it gets fun. If I've got that, I can play any key anywhere on the neck, right? Check this out. C chord. Right, I know all my C's. I go cops always get free donuts. Okay, great. But what if I gotta play like an F sharp 7? Right? Well, here's F sharp. I play F7 shape, right? Gives me F sharp 7. Cops always get free donuts. F to the D. Right? Gives me F sharp 7 there. Using the same shape, right? Or I could even do this. C shape, A shape, G shape. That's all the F sharps going up the neck, right? F sharp 7. And we can do that with any key. So we have, as we can see here on the top, 12 keys, right? You got G sharp and A flat, same key. A sharp and B flat, same key. B, C sharp, D flat, same key. D sharp, E flat, same key. E, F sharp, G flat, same key. G, and G sharp, A flat in the same key. So we have 12 of these. And if I can play all those chords, that leads me around and shows me everything that I can play on my fretboard using the shapes. Right? Now, when we got to get to those other chords, F sharp major 7, G minor 7, B minor 7 flat 5, E, like we can find these chords by knowing our scale. Now, remember how we found our scale, right? Any note, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. We got to find it on the fretboard, right? If I'm just looking at it like this and I'm going whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step, that's great. But that means I got to walk all the way up the neck, right? Okay, let's do that. Let's try it like this. We'll play it from C. So we'll go from the open C. Okay, you guys see that? Here's my open C. Right, so I'll play my C chord. We said the 2 chord was a minor chord, right? So here's my D. So I'm going to mark that and bar that. But I'm going to play the C minor shape, right? So I put the bottom 3 here. And I don't have to bar this now. I can just hold that top string. Right? That gives me D minor. Right? With no root. Right? Or actually the root's here on the bottom. But not on the string that we're counting from. C. D minor. If I move this up a whole step, E minor. Right, half step with a major, F, right, whole step, G major, right, whole step, minor, A minor, right, half step, or a whole step again, and then this is the diminished shape, right? So remember with the C, remember how we did this? So say we got our C picture like this. We move these 2 down, and that stays in place, right? So that shape becomes the diminished shape. But that's the root. So if we go here, C, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor. So if I go here, that means that this is B diminished. back to C major. And that's all my chords in the key. But how many people play like that? They play all the way up and down the neck, right? Using the same shape. We don't usually do that. What we do is we mix our shapes, right? Like I'll play C here, D minor here, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, back to C, right? I'll play it there. Or I can go into the next bracket and do those same things. Now, what am I doing there is I'm going off of this, right? Right, so C, I build the C chord. D, E minor, right? I'm playing it here because my normal shape would be back, right? So like, for example, if I'm doing this, D, but with the C shapes. That's the C shape, 2 chord shape. My 3 chord would look like this, right? Which would keep that intact. Kind of makes sense. Right, so in the open position though, I have to use that same picture here. Right, so it's the D shape just moved up. All right. Next week, we're going to be looking at the scale shapes and how these tie in. But I'm going to give you a number. And this week, what I want you to do is I want you to memorize this number. Okay? This thing is going to, and who cares if you don't know what it means this week? You're going to know what it means next week because I want this number pounded into your head. Think of it as a phone number. Okay? Real simple. 7, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1, 4. Okay, 7, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1, 4. And I'm going to give you a hint. There are rules that we have to follow because of the tuning of the ukulele. Okay, but when we visit the chord shape into the scale shape by using this number, all of this is going to make sense. The same way we tied in cops always get free donuts to be going up the neck, you'll be able to see the connection between the scale, the chord pictures, and you'll never get lost again on the fretboard if you know that phone number and you know where to find your next pictures. Now, here's what I want you to do. You got 2 sets of homework today. Number 1, you're going to remember that number, 7362514. Okay, get that locked into your head. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to go back to your pictures that we had on here. These guys. Okay. And what I want you to do is memorize where the roots are. Okay, so for example, C, right, it has roots on the 3rd string and the 1st string. A has roots on the 1st string and the 4th string. G has roots on the 4th string and the 2nd string. F has its root on the 2nd string, and D has its root on the 3rd string. Okay, and I'm going to tell you guys why this is important. Because if we learn how to pick our scale, right? I'm going here. If that's my 1, I have to know what shape has the 1 or the root on the 4th string. I'll use that chord. Right? My 2 is a minor. I use the minor shape. 3 is on this string now, right? What shape has the root here? It's that D shape or the C shape. And that's a 3, so it's a minor. 4 major, 5 major, 6 minor, but it's on this string, right? So what shape has that? Or, right? Both of them have that. G shape, F shape. Cops always get free, right? 7, that's the diminished, right? On this note, we got that shape, right? And back to the 1, but now it's on the second string, which is a G shape or an F shape, right? So now I got my chords all here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, back to 1, right? So if we can understand that, then all this will start making sense, and we can play all the chords from the picture. I don't even have to know the name of the chord anymore. I just got to know where the number is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Remember the phone number? 7362514. Why is that important? 1, 4, right? 7362514. So if this is 1, underneath it is 4. If this is 7, underneath it is 3. 7, 3. Right? If this is 3, underneath it is 6. So it goes down that way. But then on the ukulele, like I said, we've got some rules, and we'll talk about that next week. Hopefully this has been fun, and everybody gets it. Again, if you don't, that's okay. We're going to be delving into this. We got about 8 to 10 weeks that we're going to be diving into this thing, and by the end of it, you guys are going to understand everything there is to know, at least from my perspective, on, you know, how to get the fretboard to tie to each other. Hopefully this has been fun, and yeah,